Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm really glad that you're here with us today. I'm Josh Basile, the Community Relations Manager at accessiBe, and today we're going to be talking about three shifts reshaping e-commerce in 2026 and why they matter for conversation or for conversions, compliance, and visibility. These shifts aren't abstract. They're already showing up in how customers discover brands, how revenue is won and lost, and how legal risk is changing businesses online. Next slide. So this is an opinion. It's based on original research with 300 e-commerce leaders, plus we've been supported by thousands of live stores every day. We're sharing today reflects real patterns we're seeing across industries, what's breaking, what's changing, and what forward-looking teams are already adjusting. Next slide. So before we jump into the shifts, I want to ground today in people, not just data, because these perspectives of this panel are shaped by lived experience and real world work. I'm going to start briefly by sharing my own journey. When I was a teenager, I was in waist high water, and a wave picked me up, threw me over my boogie board, and paralyzed me below my shoulders. That day changed my life forever and set me on a path to doing good and being on a mission to change the world. So since then, I started a nonprofit where every year I get to reach thousands of families impacted by paralysis and disability. I graduated magna cum laude over a decade ago from law school, and without ever flipping a page with my fingers, thanks to technology. And now I've had an incredible legal career focused on disability rights and changing lives of those that have been catastrophically injured. Um, I ended up joining the accessiBe family 5 years ago, and as the community relations manager, and had a really big focus on making sure that the disability community has had a seat at the table within our company and as we build out our technologies and as they evolve. I was honored last year in 2025 to be make it onto the Forbes first ever accessibility 100 list for law and government, and that was something that I'm truly proud of, and it's just something that accessibility is so important to me and so many others in the community and worth fighting for each and every day. I'd love to throw it over now to Kelley Simoneaux to introduce herself.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon to those on the East Coast, and hopefully staying warm on all this snow and ice. I'm based in the DC area. My name is Kelley Simoneaux. I'm a lawyer, and my journey into law was really based on my own life, personal experiences. When I was 16, I was in a car wreck and was paralyzed. I sustained a spinal cord injury, and in 1 second, I had to learn to navigate my life in a new way. Now I'm the owner of a law firm, and thankfully, I'm what people call a happy lawyer because I get to do things that bring meaning to me. And a lot of what I do is help people in their journeys after catastrophic events, but also connecting with the disability community and also building those bridges on accessibility. We can all be connected so much better through accessibility. And today I am glad to really shed insights related to the laws. What does the laws and accessibility say as it pertains to websites? Because at the end of the day, we all want to, one, better connect with people out there, but also mitigate risk. So glad to be here.
Thank you, Kelley. And Tanuj, share a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tanuj Apte. You can call me TJ if that's easier to remember. I'm based in Long Island, New York, and I am the owner of Wix Gods. We are a Wix-focused web agency, although we also do other platforms as well, including WordPress, GoDaddy, Shopify, Squarespace, you name it. In my journey as a agency owner, I came across an ADA lawsuit for one of my clients early on in 2022. And that's what sort of introduced me to the world of accessibility and what it pertains to. Our client ended up getting sued for not having an accessible website. And it made me realize that this is not just a one-off situation. Most small business owners simply don't know or don't have the resources to make their sites accessible, which can open them to a plethora of, lawsuits, demand letters, and just legal headache all in all. We were able to get that client in question out of the hot water. The case went to arbitration, was decided in their favor, and accessiBe's widgets, their audits, our website redesigns had a lot to do with that. But we did not want any other small business owner to ever be in that situation again, which is why we started a nonprofit called Access Heroes, whose sole aim is to provide free consultations, education, and resources to small business owners like yourself to help them make their websites accessible and improve their SEO, improve their target audience, allow for a more ethical inclusion of people with disabilities, and at the same time reduce any legal risk. So I'm here today to talk about how being on the ground as both a business owner and a web agency, the kind of shifts we're seeing in e-commerce and how accessibility ties to all of that. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I love this lineup today. We're bringing it to you with the legal, business, and community perspectives. And as we dive deeper in, set your expectations now. This is a multi-angle conversation because this is how these shifts actually show up in the real world. At any moment, please put in the chat any questions you might have, and we have a great Q&A at the end. But we'll go to the next slide. So with this, we're going to walk through the shifts, show you how they connect, share what leading teams are doing differently, and we will leave plenty of time for questions. So again, throw your questions in the chat. My role today is to help guide the conversation and pull in different perspectives as we go. Next slide. So to set the stage, these shifts aren't just happening in isolation. They're stacking on top of each other. And that's where things get really get interesting. Tanuj, I'd love to bring you in here and kind of from what you kind of see day to day, how is the market actually changing for e-commerce teams?
Sure. And I'd love to give you guys some perspective on how these shifts are happening and how they sort of tie into accessibility at the core of it all, right? The first point is, pretty self-explanatory. AI is a word we've heard time and again over the last couple of years, almost to the point that it's sort of boring to hear it. But it's a very important shift in not just how we do business, but how we interact with the internet in general, right? So AI used to be like a nice to have, think chatbots, copy suggestions, maybe some automations here and there. But in recent months, AI has actively shaped how people make decisions online. This is because AI is now being used to create adaptive content that is dynamic and that is not device specific, but visitor specific. Let's say you are visiting a website from Philadelphia. If the website has something to do with the Super Bowl, it now knows to show you content about the Eagles. Same thing if you're visiting from New York. It knows to show you content about the Giants. These type of dynamic changes and adaptive content is really moving the e-commerce industry to higher conversions and better outcomes. The problem there though is these dynamic changes happens once after the site goes live. And the problem there is that creates a moving target for accessibility. So you can't rely on manual one-time audits anymore. You have to have some sort of ongoing monitoring that guides you throughout the process in this changing landscape. So pretty much to summarize that first point, AI makes sites smarter, but it also makes them more fragile if accessibility isn't addressed early on in an automated and ongoing way, right? The second point, which is probably the most important one, is that discovery is moving off of your website. Now, we've probably all heard about SEO, which stands for search engine optimization, but now that's sort of being replaced by GEO and AEO, which are generative engine optimizations and answer engine optimizations, which all sort of focus on how AI references and cites your websites in their outputs, right? Now, customers no longer use traditional methods only. A couple years ago, if you wanted to look for a plumber, you would go to Google, type in plumbers near me, click on the first four blue links that appeared. Nowadays, we're seeing a shift in that, almost 23% of traffic in some cases, where people will go directly to ChatGPT and try to maybe figure out the problem on their own. Hey, my toilet's clogged. What do I do? And then some point in that conversation, they want to hand it off to an expert. So they ask, what are some really highly rated plumbers in my area? Or where can I get this service? So visitors are now coming to the website because ChatGPT recommended you, or because Google summarized your site in its output, or because they found you through an AI answer. So essentially, what this means is your site isn't just built for humans anymore. It's built for machines that explain your business to the humans, right? And although GEO by itself is a whole thing that needs to be maintained and monitored monthly, the similarities between accessibility and GEO are extremely stark. AI engines essentially rely on things like semantic structure, clean headings, proper labels like alt text to rank and deliver your site in results. And those are the exact same foundations that also power accessibility. So accessibility and GEO sort of go hand in hand, and doing one directly benefits the other in this case. And then number three is that accessibility is becoming infrastructure. And this is completely true. Where most business owners get surprised is that ADA lawsuits and accessibility demand letters are no longer limited to large brands. They're normally triggered by automated scans, and they can affect even the most well-meaning of businesses. You could be a nonprofit with the most altruistic of missions, but if you're not ADA compliant and you get sued, you're in hot water regardless of what your mission is or how benevolent your company might seem, right? So a common pattern that we see here on the ground is websites that were built a couple of years ago. They've been through a couple of redesigns since, but accessibility as a topic was never focused on or never revisited. So what's changed here is it's not just enforcement of the laws, it's expectations. Accessibility has become infrastructure. It's like hosting or security or databases or backups. You want it ingrained inherently into the fabric of the website from the ground up so that even as the site continues to evolve, as you add new products, new features, the accessibility portion grows with the website. So keep in mind that the businesses that struggle in this case are not the careless ones. They're the ones that assumed accessibility was a one-time task and they got complacent about it. So this is something that you have to sort of stay on top of and do on an ongoing basis. I'm sure we'll post a link later, but if any of you would like to pick my brain, me personally, my personal calendar link is in the Zoom chat. Feel free to book a consult, and I'll be more than happy to walk you through any of the things that we just mentioned.
Tanuj, thank you for that. And so what I'm really hearing you saying is that these aren't kind of separate problems to solve. They're like they reinforce each other. And that's kind of where the real impact shows up. And again, thank you for your insights on that. You're awesome. Next slide. So cart conversion is where kind of revenue is quietly being lost, and often with teams really not realizing why. Okay, next slide. So here's the stat that stops a lot of people in their tracks. 260 billion in sales could be recovered simply by improving checkout usability. So Tanuj, can you share a little bit more about your perspective from a web agency?
Sorry, I was on mute. 100%, yes. This is what we call conversion rate optimization. Essentially, it's not just about how people find you. It's about once they get on your site, how easy is it for them to make a decision? Do you have a clear call to action? If somebody comes to your cart and puts something in their cart and they leave, do you follow up with automated emails? Do you try to get that person back in by sending them a promo code? There's a bunch of tactics and methodologies that we prescribe to make sure that you don't just have people land on the site, you actually handhold them all the way to the end till they make that decision and become a customer, one way or the other.
It's so important. I know for myself, like I use different accessibility tools and technologies to get myself from the start to the end. And it's great to be able to find what I'm looking for, but then to get to the card. And then I'm with my voice dictation software, I'm not able to type in my credit card information. or my name. And it's just like, and then I have to wait for a family member or a friend to get home. And by that point, I'm usually on another site checking out where I'm buying a different product from a competitor.
Yep.
And I want that first experience to be a good experience. And when it is a good experience, I come back again and again as a repeat customer. And that's what the disability community does. Like where statistics have shown is the disability community is the most brand loyal community. When you're taken care of once, you come back again and again, and you recommend it to all your friends and family as well. So, next slide. This is kind of with this side, this is where kind of the disconnect really shows up. 70% of global cart abandonment, 72% of bans say that they're confident in checkout, and 40% haven't audited checkout in over a year. If abandonment is that high, where is the confidence coming from? So most teams assume if something were broken, analytics would tell them so, which is not always the case. Next slide. So this is kind of here's where the quiet gap is. 80% of agree accessibility improvements reduce abandonment, but rarely test for it. That's got to change. 62% worry about checkout performance. Analytics show performance issues. They don't show the kind of the friction experienced by someone using keyboard screen readers or assistive technology, like myself and others with disabilities. Next slide. Cart abandonment isn't random. It's unclear fields, extra steps, missing cues, and these create hesitation and bad experiences. So when friction isn't visible internally, revenue doesn't crash. It just quietly kind of walks or wheels away. And that's why kind of these issues persist over time without being checked on. Next slide. So let's shift to kind of the discovery. So AI is changing where discovery begins, and it's happening structurally and not gradually. I would love for everybody that's a part of this today in the Zoom chat, I would love you to answer this question. How many times in the last month have you searched for a product using AI tools? Thank you, Glenn. Yes, many times. AI tools are here to stay, and we're using them to have better, faster experiences, and especially as they get to know us and we trust them more. And it's almost like a personal assistant to go find and search the internet for us. So next slide. So discovery doesn't start with a search bar anymore. It starts with a question, it starts with a prompt. Nearly 1 billion prompts go into AI tools every day, driving over 1 billion visits to websites. This is the new storefront as we see it. Next slide. So most people are using AI for research, kind of narrowing the options, comparing, and deciding who to trust. To surface early, AI needs structure. Accessibility helps AI understand your product's content and images that much better. So it's essential today. Next slide. So so AI can't recommend what it can't understand. And so the structure matters. So semantic, HTML, clear labels, and structured content aren't just accessibility best practices. They're kind of discoverability advantages. It's best practices put in front of AI technology so they can do what they do best. Next slide. So 75% of brands already adjusting content for AI. 24% are planning, and only 1% say that they're not. So accessibility boosts AI discoverability and helps brands lead rather than react. Next slide. So the regulatory kind of environment is shifting and enforcement is really, really accelerating. Kelley, I would love you to kind of bring to your to the table your perspective. And what are you seeing from an enforcement and legal standpoint?
Thanks, Josh. And this is so important because as we all know, like this, AI is such a moving target right now. And often, on the side of the law as a lawyer, I can tell you our court systems, we're very reactionary. We're not ahead of the curve on any of this. We're just trying to keep up little by little. And this is certainly what we're seeing. There's a lot of regulations and laws and interpretations floating around, but it's all moving in one direction, and that is in terms of accessibility, like it matters and it's required.
Next slide.
So we can see how accessibility, the expectations of accessibility in the digital space is aligning across many different regions. There are different, depending where you live. Many of us in the US, we've heard of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's been around since 1990. It really set a lot of the framework for what we see in accessibility. And to be clear, under the ADA, websites do need to be accessible. Let me repeat it. Under the ADA, you need to be operating a website in an accessible way. But the ADA is just one of many different types of legislation or regulations that we see that really across the globe. The Accessible Canada Act, the ACA, it's going in that same direction. Websites need to be accessible. The EAA, the European Accessibility Act, again, it's showing that websites and the digital space must be accessible for all. And the best way we can really, I mean, there's data points we can track. For a while, we were really unclear what direction. You could see that there had been litigation brought related to web accessibility here and there. But what this graph shows from 2020 to 2026 is a growing trend. It's not here and there, it's everywhere, it's systematic, and it's going to continue to trend upwards. There has been a 73% increase in digital accessibility lawsuits since 2019. And everything is showing that people care about this. People want to be able to, every part of a person with a disability who requires accessibility in the digital space, every part of their life touches, needs, requires access in the digital space. And that's why it matters. And that's why we're seeing these cases trending upward. Now, you can see that trend, the increase in 73%, but we can really narrow in more specifically on who that is affecting, what types of businesses. I mean, I myself have a small business, and often it can be overwhelming to consider all the different things that you have to keep running. But I'm telling you, accessibility, the risk of that potential demand letter coming in the mail to you, the potential risk of that lawsuit being filed against you, it is not worth it. In the e-commerce space, um, it is disproportionately being targeted, being demand letters being sent if you have an e-com business. 70% of the lawsuits are against e-commerce businesses, 70%. And and that in real numbers means that over 5,000 web accessibility lawsuits were filed just last year. And we're going to see that number be bigger for 2026 and bigger for 2027. Um, and of the people surveyed who have e-commerce teams, 43% said that they had faced some type of legal claim against them. And again, this is most of the time e-commerce businesses are not intentionally trying to leave out this very large sector of our society. But when it happens, it has a big impact and it puts you at a substantial risk. So, we all, as business owners, on my side, from the legal lens, like you have to look at risk. Accessibility risk is an operational risk, because inaccessibility has a cost. There is a cost to having to engage in a legal process. There is a cost to hiring lawyers. There is a cost to potentially having to pay to damages to the side that is bringing the claim. And there's a cost to ultimately having to then have your website made accessible. Um, so that is why instead of, again, being on this very reactionary path that oftentimes we all are, we have to prepare ourselves because it is tracking upward. It is becoming a greater risk, and it needs to become more of a priority in the business planning. Um, Accessibility has to be one of those buckets that is influencing the decisions of businesses sooner rather than later. Because ultimately, if it's a reaction, if it's something that is dealt with when it becomes a problem, it's going to come at a very significant cost. The process of working through a legal claim for inaccessibility on a website, it is costing businesses a lot of money. And thinking of it on the front end, planning for it, reducing that risk is what we all need to strive to, especially in the e-com business.
Kelley, thank you so much for that. And it's just the costs, the time, the headache. Businesses want to focus on what they do best, which is their mission and their drive to start that business and to serve their customers. So it's just
Mhm.
it's so essential to and what was kind of clear while you were saying that this isn't theoretical anymore. And accessibility now has kind of those measurable costs, both financially and operationally. Next slide.
Yeah. Yeah, and just one, we've seen in Europe like they're assigning like set fines for these types of issues where if you're operating a website that affects people in Europe, which that could be a person in the US but having an impact in Europe, I mean that could be over, half a million euro. In the US, we are looking at, tens of thousands of dollars to affect these to having to work back and look at the litigation. So it comes at a very steep cost.
Thank you, Kelley. And the next slide. There we go. This is kind of where the three shifts overlap. It's discovery, conversion, and enforcement. And that overlap creates opportunities for teams willing to treat kind of accessibility as infrastructure, not as an afterthought. Next slide. So discoverability as AI becomes the storefront, barrier-free, high-intent flows, and reduce legal risk as enforcement becomes operational. Accessibility is the unlock across all three. Next slide. So we do have this readiness checklist. I'm not going to kind of dive crazy deep into any of them, but this slide is really a takeaway. You don't need to know everything at once, but you do need visibility and you need to start somewhere. Next slide. So we'll drop the link in the full 2026 accessibility trends report in the chat. It goes deeper into how teams are operationalizing these shifts, exactly what to do next. Next slide. So this is where kind of technology, expertise, and scale come together. Accessibility works when it's kind of continuous. It's not just a switch that you can flip. So automate what scales, test what breaks, and maintain what changes. And accessiBe has a full suite of services wherever you're at in your journey, whether it's the Access widget, the Access flow, all of our services to be able to get PDF remediation and everything beyond with VPATs, you name it, accessiBe's got your back during this journey. We're now going to dive into Q&A and let's do that. So let's open it up. And we'll pull in Tanuj and for marketing and operator questions, and Kelley for legal and enforcement questions. So Pierre, do you want to jump in with any of the questions from the chat or?
We have one now. How can I ensure my checkout process is fully optimized and accessible? I'll go back to the checklist if anyone wants to repeat.
Thank you, Sapir. Tanuj, do you want to grab that one?
Yeah, I can shed some light on that. So it all comes down to a bunch of variables, right? Number one would be what platform you're on, whether it's a Wix or a Shopify. Once you've sort of identified that, you can essentially create workflows to ensure that the checkout process is accessible. And optimized and accessible are two different things, right? Optimized could mean that you want the highest conversion rate or the lowest drop-off rate between someone landing on the page and someone making a decision. Accessible, although it goes hand in hand with optimizing it, accessible means that you don't want people dropping off because they couldn't access a button or they couldn't use, vocation or they couldn't use uh, certain tools that are necessary for them to take out any hindrances or hurdles to get to the end. This is a pretty good checklist, but what we could do is there is ways to audit your uh, checkout processes using both accessiBe's audit tools, but there's also some more comprehensive auditing you can do. If you'd like to go over that in detail, feel free to hit the link and book a call with me. I'd be more than happy to walk you through your specific use case and exactly what needs to happen.
Tanuj, I have another question for you from Eve. What happens if our website isn't fully accessible yet? And can you provide any suggestions on what somebody in that situation can do next?
Yeah, the very first thing you can do is go and do an audit. accessiBe has a pretty good scanner called accessScan. It's free to use. You essentially just drop in your URL and it'll tell you exactly what parts of your website are not accessible. At that point, you have two options. You can either, if you're technical enough, go through that list and fix all of those options yourself. In some cases, your platform, whether that's Shopify or Wix, will also have their own accessibility checklist that you can follow. But once you're done doing all the accessibility checklist items and checking them off, you still, as an extra measure of precaution, you want to get some sort of widget or tool like accessiBe's Access widget just for that extra layer of protection. Because it comes with the litigation support, it comes with monthly audits and reports. It sort of puts the headache away. So it moves you from a one-time solution or fix to an ongoing remediation process, which is exactly the pitfall that most people that get sued for accessibility lawsuits fail to recognize. So you can definitely do the audits, definitely do the checklists, but on top of that, to go that extra level, get a widget in place that protects you on an ongoing basis.
I can say from to that question from a legal perspective that what courts, what judges look at is what steps a business is taking to correct what they have identified as a problem. So of course, like I would say, if you have already identified your website is not fully accessible from a legal standpoint, that is a risk. You see that remains a deficit because if someone's trying to utilize a certain thing and they're unable to, that could cause exposure. But that is why it's so important that you have already recognized that there is not that full accessibility yet, and that you immediately start taking those steps. Don't wait until you get the demand letter. Don't wait until you get the lawsuit filed. You start now and you start working on it. And especially with so many tools available, accessiBe's, you have it as a plugin, and it doesn't mean you have to be technical. It does the work for you. And so courts know that, and courts know that judges know that there's different tools out there, and they want to see that people are putting in the effort, making the movement to make their website accessible.
Thank you, Kelley. And from Brandon in the chat says, how can accessiBe specifically help e-commerce brands address these challenges? I know you guys said some of the things to do, but could you add some more on top of that to answer Brandon's question?
How can accessibility specifically help? Well, the biggest help that comes from making a site ADA compliant is that there's a couple of things. Number one, by making a site accessible, you're automatically casting a wider net. Data shows that almost 1 in 5 Americans live with one of these disabilities that accessibility addresses. So simply by adding accessibility to your website and making it ADA compliant, you are now essentially broadening your target audience by almost 20-25%. So you're casting a wider net, right? So that's more eyeballs, more potential customers that you can now serve. The second benefit is SEO. SEO, GEO, and any sort of search engine optimization goes hand in hand with accessibility. Because accessibility and the way sites are structured follow the same principles, making your site accessible directly improves your ranking and your visibility components as Google, ChatGPT, and other search platforms see them. So it's not just for, inclusion, it's also to better your traffic, better your conversions, and better your outcomes on the site. And last but not least, probably the most important is accessibility can help you thwart any legal headache, whether that's a lawsuit, whether that's a demand letter that you received. From my personal experience, I'll tell you that most businesses think that an ADA lawsuit is something that they can just shrug off. That's not the case. As Kelley said before, in my experience, I've seen that the average lawsuit, whether it's a settlement, whether it goes to court, it costs you a minimum of $15,000 to $20,000, maybe even more in some cases. And that's just not headache that you want to deal with. It is something that can be easily avoided because really what the courts want to see is that you're not negligent in your behavior against making your sites compliant. They want to see actionable steps that you've taken to ensure that you're, facing ADA compliance in an ongoing way and you're not dropping the ball and saying, hey, maybe this is not for me. It is. It's mandatory for all websites. And having ADA compliance not only improves your brand reputation, but it directly improves the amount of people that can now potentially be customers. So it's a win-win-win situation in my opinion. But again, happy to discuss further. If you have a specific question about your website, feel free to hit that link and we can discuss.
Thank you, Tanuj. And with that being said, any e-commerce business, the beauty of accessibility is whether you're a small business, medium, large, or wherever you're at in your journey, they have a system or a product or an approach in place to support you wherever you're at in your journey. So it's the big thing is no business wakes up saying, you know what, I want to exclude people with disabilities today, or I want to exclude people with disabilities throughout our journey. They just, not one business thinks that. It's just they don't know what they don't know. But once a business knows that they can do something to address this, it's now up to them to choose what they do next. So now that you have information, you have options, that's that power to now bring you to the next level to make sure you do better around this and actually also address it to improve your business in its own right. Another question in the chat is, what does it mean to make my site AI and accessibility ready?
That's pretty much, as I said before, they kind of go hand in hand, right? Both accessibility and AI ready websites all come down to the semantic structure, clear labeling of the website, making sure you have the right alt text. Essentially, you're getting your site ready so that the visitor is not really just humans anymore. It's machines and humans. So you want the site to be machine readable, right? Whether that's AI chatbots, AI agents, what have you. And statistics show that as we progress in the AI race, more and more users on the internet will be bots. At one point in time, whether that's 2 years from now, 5 years from now, the internet will be, bots will outnumber actual active human users. And when that happens, you want to make sure that your site is not just then, but transitioned to a way that it is readable by machines, it's readable by bots, it has clear semantic structure, clear tags and titles, clear meta content, and all those same foundational improvements also improve accessibility. So they both go hand in hand. And I'm sure Sapir can link an article on, best practices on how to make your site accessible, because it's those exact same foundational items that also help with AI visibility.
Thank you, Tanuj. And we have a question. Does Shopify automatically set up accessible checkout?
Yeah.
The
The
answer is
answer is no. Yes. Most platforms are not accessible inherently. If you just do a quick Google, whether it's Wix, Shopify, WordPress, Squarespace, the problem is that these platforms are only giving you the tools to build your site. They're not on the hook, or they're not liable to make sure that whatever you build is accessible and doesn't discriminate against people with disabilities. So at the end of the day, you're on the hook to make sure that your site, your processes, your workflows are accessible. And yeah, there's no one really that you can shift that onus to. So you have to, ensure that ADA compliance and accessibility are infrastructurally important elements in your website.
I love it. And for our panelists, is there any last things that you would like to say before we wrap up today's webinar?
Well, since I'm a lawyer, I never like to skip the opportunity to have a last word, but I would just like to say that, I think having a plan in place, using this in your business development as a checkbox to always make sure you're checking. People often ask me, like, what kinds of companies is this happening to? And I can say with certainty it's happening to all sizes in all different sectors. Some of the main cases that have worked through the court systems have been small firms, had up to the mega, businesses. And so it's important that not only one aspect of a website is, that the whole thing is, and to know that there's a lot of resources out there so that you're not having to get bogged down and feeling overwhelmed by it, but knowing that this can be done, and that a checkbox can eliminate that risk.
Thank you, Kelley. And Tanish, do you have anything else you would love to share with your expertise?
No, I mean, again, the only thing that I would like to say is, ADA compliance in general is not a topic that's discussed enough. Most businesses get sent demand letters or get sued because they simply don't know that ADA compliance applies to their business, right? It's not just for physical businesses, it's for any service-based businesses, online businesses, especially e-commerce businesses. So not just you, but if you have friends and family that have businesses, that have websites, spread the word. It only helps everybody when everyone is accessible.
Okay, Kelley and Tanuj, thank you so much for being on today's webinar, and thank you so much for our guests and for everybody for being on this journey with us. I'm a big believer in together we're stronger and together we're not alone. And the more we can do together to support each other and to be a part of all of these journeys, we're here. So thank you, everyone. And until next time. Have a beautiful day and yeah, cheers to 2026. Bye, everyone.